Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Good day, all. My name is Peace Chamake Zekwem. I'm the Pan-African Health Professional Organization Coordinator for Earth and Climate. It's good to be in this pavilion this morning in Nigerian time to be discussing on indigenous food and how it can combat climate change crises and also conserve our biodiversity. So permit me to share my slides now. Thank you. This morning, we're going to be looking at promotion of indigenous plant-based foods to conserve biodiversity and combat climate change crisis. What should we know? We must not only produce global population, but must also produce a diversity of foods that nurture human health and support environmental sustainability. We'll be looking at this outline. What is biodiversity? Okay, biodiversity is actually the variety of living organisms in the world or in the ecosystem. It includes animals, plants, and other terrestrial and aquatic lives. So presently, it's been known that our eating habits are having an adverse effect on the environment. So for radical change from leading environmental, thus we have to look for sustainable way to change crisis. And when we do so, it will be a win-win for the planet because we'll be able to combat climate change crisis and at the same time conserve biodiversity. So most of Africans and many others, so they help to reduce the consumption of wild to prevent exploitation of natural ecosystem, and it also prevents pollution. We all know that plants sequestrate carbon. So when they store so much carbon in their system or in the plant cells, it will prevent addition of greenhouse gases emission because CO2 also contributes to greenhouse gases emission. And then we also need changing policies, and we also need to advocate for policies in order to conserve our biodiversity because we cannot do it alone. Our leaders have to be environmentally conscious in order to support this system. So at Pan-African Health Professional Organization, we are placed to help healthcare professionals, consumers, our clients, patients, and stakeholders who would collaborate to navigate the complex message surrounding our ecosystem and to relate and transform food habits and behaviors so that we can protect our climate and save the planet. So these are some of the ways we can classify our foods. They can be classified if they are plant or animal based. They can also be classified according to food groups. Food groups is actually a collection or a list of foods that have similar nutritional quality and at the same time also have similar biological properties. And also the level of processing, whether it's unprocessed or overprocessed, can also determine the classification of such food. So indigenous plant-based foods are foods that are native to the people of that community or that area. We have indigenous African plant-based diets. We also have Asian, we have Australia, we have America, and so many other indigenous plant-based foods. So a global food system means we can enjoy food from all around regions in the world, whether from Asia, from America, from Africa. It's all a global food system. And when we support or promote indigenous plant-based food, we are also able to help protect the climate. So the continent of Africa is endowed with lots of plant-based food, such as the photo we have beneath. We have a white boiled yam with a stew sauce. So here are some of the foods we can find in Africa. We can find varieties of legumes. We have all kinds of beans. We have potatoes. We have walnuts. Walnut is the last food in the graphics. We also have so many vegetables. We have African spinach. We have local pear and many more. Then we also have the diets that we can use them to make. We have our soups, our vegetable soups with swallow. In the local names, we can find eba. We can find fufu. We also have plantain that can be eaten with a green sauce or a stew. In Ghanaian meals, we also have so many of them. In Egyptian diets, we also have so many of them, as we can see in the photos. So what are the benefits of this food? They're important food sources for hundreds of years because these foods are indigenous to these people. So it's one of their main staples. It also provides diverse nutritional quality and food security. When you grow indigenous foods, they're always resilient to climate change. And at the same time, they're always nutritious because they can adapt to whatever extreme weather conditions that comes within the community or within the space where they're grown. Traditional diet also helps to prevent malnutrition and disease. We all know that we love conservatism of cuisine. People are used to a particular food and it's very difficult to change. So when they are eating their local food, they'll be able to stay nourished and maintain health. Someone that has malnutrition may not easily adapt to maybe a processed food that the person is not used to eating. Thus, we have to promote our indigenous plant-based foods. They are nutrient dense, they are packed with helps promoting phytonutrients, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. They're also better for the ecosystem and sustainable. Yes, they are very good because here they conserve water. They conserve water. If it's a drought-prone area, the trees or the plants that are native to those places will not consume so much water. And then also, these plant-based foods can withstand extreme heat stress because they are already adapted to that region. And also, they also help to sequestrate carbon, as I've said earlier. So you can see that local plant-based foods, they're very sustainable. They can be here and there for the next future generation that will come. They also don't contribute to drastic damage to the ecosystem. Yes, most of these local plant foods are already indigenous, so they're well adapted and they may not need too much nitrogen fertilizers to use and grow them. And we know that when we use so much of nitrogen fertilizers, it releases nitrous oxide, which will also add up to the greenhouse gases in the space or in the atmosphere. So these are some of the benefits of indigenous plant-based meals. They help to conserve water, they preserve our forests, they also reduce greenhouse gases emission, and they also protect biodiversity. Biodiversity in Africa. Africa is very rich in biodiversity, both in terms of ecosystem, flora, that's plants and animals. So there are abundance of them. In the next photo, I'll be showing us some trees and some animals we can find in Africa. We can see the zebra. We can also see some other woods or trees that can also be seen in sub-Saharan Africa. So biodiversity in Africa. This is also the tropical moist forests of Africa boast estimated 1.5 million species. The fauna of African tropical moist forests accounts for 84% of the continent's primates, 68% of passerine birds, and 66% of butterfly species. Hundreds of wildlife species are used by natives on a daily basis as their main supply of vitamin, protein, carbohydrate, and other nutrients. They are world's richest grasslands. In Africa, we have the world's richest grassland, and is a home abode for large mammals like elephants, hippopotamus, lions, leopards, buffaloes, and more. Commonly found trees in Africa include, we have the Manila tree, we have the mahogany, we have the moringa. Moringa is a very climate resilient crop or plant. It can be used, the vegetables can be used as a source of staple. It helps to conserve water and is very medicinal and therapeutic. So these are some of the wild animals we can find in our environment. These are some of the plants that we can also see in Africa. We have the marola, we have the boab. So what has really changed? Millions of people depend on native foods and crop varieties, such as wild and bush crops. And the United Nations has said that 75% of the world's plant genetic diversity has been lost. This is as a result of globalization, commercialized agriculture, and many more. And another third is predicted to be gone by 2050. So commercial farmers and producers have turned to highest yielding crops. Yes, because they've commercialized the agriculture and they do not value any longer the indigenous plant-based food. They use a lot of fertilizers, a lot of improved techniques that may not be sustainable and healthy for these plants. And because of this, their gene mutates and then it does not become so biodiverse as it should be. So the genetic diversity is almost lost. So what should happen now that we experience so much climate change? We have to come back to what it used to be so that we can be able to conserve and protect biodiversity. This will also help the health of the people and also not put the planet at risk. So this is the chart showing the biodiversity loss for a while. We can see that from 1970, it was quite not so much. The biodiversity loss was less, but gradually down to 2016, we can see that we've lost almost 65%. So human activities has actually been the key drivers of climate change, because when human activities are being carried out, like burning of fossil fuel, deforestation, and so many other things that go on, even transportation, land use, animal livestock husbandry, and some other animal farming procedures and processes, it generates greenhouse gases emissions that trap heat and also raise temperatures. And we've noticed that elevated greenhouse gas emissions have a direct impact on global warming. When the greenhouse gas emission exceeds its threshold, it heats up the earth, and some of the greenhouse gases trap this heat that is being released from the earth and still bounce it back to the earth, warming up temperatures. And when the temperature becomes warmer, it causes extreme weather events like the droughts and the floods. Most especially in Nigeria, we are facing severe flooding because of the changes in climate. Our climate is fast changing, and some of the water has flown from the sea because of high sea level into the inland, and they are drought prone. So animal foods such as red meat, poultry, fish contribute to most of the greenhouse gases emission. This is because either from the composition or from the production, and also from the fecal waste that they release. So we have to cut down on consumption of red meat in order to protect biodiversity and reduce climate change crisis. So red and processed meat have the single biggest environmental impact when compared to other types of foods, as we have said earlier. And actually, animal food also our richest and most bioavailable source of protein and iron. Nevertheless, we can still have a well-planned and portioned meal in order to meet our goals when we cut down on animal products. So this is a chart showing the greenhouse effect, how gases are being released and then how they form a blanket at the atmosphere, trap the heat that comes from the earth, keep it, some like methane has the potency of staying for thousands of years, trapping up heat from the atmosphere and bouncing it back into the earth. So when this keeps happening, it heats up the earth's surface and then it results in greenhouse gases effects, and then results to climate change. So livestock farming, as we said, is the biggest contributor to food-related greenhouse gases emissions. We also have deforestation, we have biodiversity loss, we also have soil pollution, land and water use, and animal farming also uses so much water, about 70% of water. So cattle are one of the largest contributors to this problem that we are facing right now. And in Nigeria, we have nomadic and the northern part of Nigeria, we rear cattle a lot, both for feeding and for other purposes. So this is a chart showing the loss of carbon stock from forested land. We can see the methane released during enteric fermentation of ruminant livestock. We can also see nitrous oxide from pasture microbial process nitrification and denitrification. This can happen maybe during fertilizer application and so many other things that go on. Then we can also see burning of savanna generating so much methane and nitrous oxide. Then processing of fossil fuel also generates so much methane, carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide. Then other fuel combustion releases methane and nitrous oxide from burning of biomass. And we can see the percentages in the charts. So it's right to point out that human activities has actually been the key drivers of this change. So what should we do? IPCC said that it has proposed a safe limit to hot global warming to less than 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit in order to cut down the emissions of these greenhouse effects and limit or mitigate global climate changes. So these experts set the limit for global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. And if we are to prevent catastrophic consequences for extreme weather conditions like drought, heat, floods, subsequent poverty, we have to act now because there is time for there is an emergency and we all have to act now collectively. It's not just one person, but all of us have to contribute our own quota to ensure that we save the planet and the health of the people. So we can see some of the consequences of climate change. We can see wildfire. In 2019, there was wildfire, so much wildfire in Australia. We can see some of our water bodies have been contaminated. And when there's contamination of water bodies, it also affects the health of the people because it puts such individuals at risk. There could also be waterborne infectious diseases as well. We can see some of our aquatic lives dying. You can see a fish lying dead there because of ocean acidification. When the carbon dioxide is so much and it also enters the water, it can result to ocean acidification and it can kill the aquatic lives in there. So what are the barriers? One of the barriers is that there is lack of awareness. How much do people know about climate change crisis and how to protect the environment? So we need to increase the awareness. We have to increase the campaign. We have to look at our food culture. The BBC Good Food Nation Survey 2020 found out that many people still regard meat as a major part of every meal. Yes, even in Africa, meat is regarded as a very important part of the meal. Some eat it in excess. Some don't even eat as much as they should eat. But in as much as that, they still consider meat as one of the most important food or one of the most important food that should be on every plate. In some parts of Nigeria and Africa, you must always even give the males in the house first before you consider the other gender. So these are some of the food cultures that go on, and we have to change behaviors. We have to transform habits in order for us to push for climate change mitigation. So the purchasing power as well. Most of the fresh fruits and vegetables can be so expensive. So people resort to low calorie, less nutrient-dense meals in order to help them eat and live their normal lives. While the foods that are actually nutrient-dense, like our fresh fruits and vegetables, our whole grains, are considered to be too expensive and may not be bought regularly for consumption. So we have to change this mindset as well, because this is one of the barriers resulting to demotion of indigenous plant-based foods. So what should we do? We have to look at our food system and price regulation. The government have to come into place to look at the food price and how prices of food are made. Are there policies, are there things to work together to see that these price regulations are enacted and put into policy and law so that people will be able to afford some of these healthy meals and also live their life and also maintain sustainability in whatever the environment entails, and also promote indigenous plant foods. So we also see that consumption of more plant sources of protein is also very vital, because if we say that we're going to be eating more plant-based meals, we also have to include most of the plant sources of protein, and it has to be adequate in amount and proportion. Also, we need to change behaviors through our healthcare system. We have to collaborate, like in in purple, we are also trying to domesticate some of our activities so that some health centers, clinics, and primary health care centers will have accessibility to climate change crisis information, and we also have awareness and campaigns in those areas, because a lot of people visit the hospital, the clinics for their health care. So we need to domesticate and collaborate with people and also the stakeholders in these hospitals and primary health centers so that they'll be able to know some of the ways in which they can mitigate climate change crisis. So we also have to collaborate as a whole. It's not just the health sector. The engineering sector has to come into place, because if we invest in plant-based diets, the energy from waste cannot be utilized for electrification of some of our vehicles and all that. So it's not just a one-man's business. We have to collaborate in order to achieve this. We also have to use famous champions as our change drivers. If we fail to use some influencers that are climate activists, it may not reach the grassroots or the intended people. So we also have to involve these people in their activism. We also have to look at our animal welfareism. How far have we gone with it? Do people still enter the bushes, the wide spaces, and kill animals anyhow? So we have to consider some of these things when putting together motivations that will increase and promote indigenous plant-based food. We have to create a supportive environment. And then we also have to consider one of the most important ones, which is food waste education and management. In most parts of Africa, we have not started managing our waste very well. We have to stay on a circular economy, meaning that whatever comes out from the food must be reused. Is either we are going into an agricultural system that involves a climate smart agriculture composting, or we also look at using it to generate energy. We have so much from briquettes and all that. How well have we diversified our energy use? So we have to incorporate some of these things into practice for us to achieve our aim and cut the temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. So in conclusion, we have to meet these global targets, not just for the planet, but also to ensure that we all eat healthy. And then planetary boundaries directly linked to food production were assessed by 6 measures, including greenhouse gases emission, biodiversity, and all others. And it was found that food has shown to reduce premature death from chronic diseases and improve sustainable food system and ecosystem. So we would say that doubling of the consumption of healthy foods, such as fruits, vegetables, legumes, and nuts, and a greater than 50% reduction in global consumption of less healthy foods, such as added sugar and red meat, will help us to promote indigenous plant-based food and also conserve our biodiversity. And at the end of the day, it will be a win-win because we have cut down on climate change crisis. So a plant-based diet is a win-win for good health and our planet. So if we are able to adopt a sustainable diet, a sustainable plant-based diet, we'll be able to minimize greenhouse gases emission by 31%, we'll reduce land use by 34%, we'll reduce water use by 17%, and we'll also increase 17.9 million years of healthy life. So this is actually a good goal, and we have to work towards it. So let's always remember that from farm to fork to waste, all stages of food system impact on the environment and biodiversity. As such, change current dietary habits in order for us to reduce carbon footprints. So at Pan-African Health Organization, we are part of this revolutionary movement, and we care for our health and the health of the planet. So these are my references. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful presentation. I think the host.
Okay, Mr. Lakule, while we wait for her, maybe you can add some contributions to what I have said so far, sir.
Okay, I'm coming. I'm trying to shut the host up, not so. I'm trying to shut the host up. We can hear you. Okay. Okay, so you can ask people. So I'll kindly go ahead at Miss Shiamaka, please. So sorry, this is Hadewale Olakunle from I would like to introduce myself again. From Pan-African, I think Health Professional Organization. Fortunate to be the current president of the organization. So, however, from the attendees, we would like, if you have any questions, as regards to the presentation, and climate change crisis as a whole, how it affects our health. So, any question, please, from the audience? Hello, anybody with us? Any question from the audience, please, from the attendees? If you have questions, kindly go ahead. Okay. 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 So, thank you all for having us here. We'll be rounding up this presentation. We'll be rounding up this presentation about indigenous plant-based. And I think from the presentation, from the guest main speaker, we are all aware of the impact, of climate change, across Africa, not across Africa alone, but across the world as a whole. So we're all aware of the impact on the healthcare system generally. I think around 2019, World Health Organization started promoting herbal medicine, because they see that they see it as part of the ways to contain, or address the issue of climate change crisis. So I think they started that in India. They make use of India as a prototype for that, and by now they are pushing for more collaborations on development of herbal medicines. And with this herbal medicine, it's as well going to help in conserving biodiversity and the overall goal of containing climate change crisis, as in increase in the global warming, so to that of 1.5 degree. So as all the world, as we are rallying around together, to bring solutions, to all this. So thank you all for having us here, and the next scope, we hope to bring more, about push more, as well as we said that we're going to domesticate. We are trying to domesticate most of the climate change, awareness and the solutions, across Africa, especially in healthcare settings. So that is it. So thank you all for having me. Thank you all for having us. Thank you. So any contribution more from Mrs. Shiamaka, please.
Okay. I think I'll conclude by saying that it's high time we took action towards minimal and zero carbon emissions from the health sector, and thus facilitating our Pan-African Health Professional Organization Green Health Initiative also help to address climate change practice. So it's time to act now. Thank you.
Thank you.